Jewish eschatology is concerned with events that will happen in the end of days, according to the Hebrew Bible and Jewish thought. This includes the ingathering of the exiled diaspora, the coming of Jewish Messiah, afterlife, and the revival of the dead Tzaddikim. Eschatology is the area of theology and philosophy concerned with the final events in the history of the world, the ultimate destiny of humanity, and related concepts. In Judaism, end times are usually called the end of days, a phrase that appears several times in the Tanakh. The idea of a Messianic Age has a prominent place in Jewish thought, and is incorporated as part of the end of days. Overview and textual sources. In Judaism, the main textual source for the belief in the end of days and accompanying events is the Tanakh or Hebrew Bible. In the 5 books of Moses, references are made in Deuteronomy chapters 28 to 31. that the Jews will not be able to keep the laws of Moses in the land of Israel and will be subsequently exiled but ultimately redeemed. The books of the Hebrew prophets elaborated and prophesied about the end of days. In rabbinic literature, the rabbis elaborated and explained the prophecies that were found in the Hebrew Bible along with the oral law and rabbinic traditions about its meaning. The main tenets of Jewish eschatology are the following, in no particular order, elaborated in the books of Isaiah, Jeremiah and Ezekiel. End of world. God redeems Israel from the captivity that began during the Babylonian exile, in a new Exodus. God returns the Jewish people to the land of Israel. God restores the house of David and the temple in Jerusalem. God creates a region from the house of David to lead the Jewish people and the world and usher in an age of justice and peace. All nations recognize that the God of Israel is the only true God. God resurrects the dead. God creates a new heaven and a new earth. It is also believed that history will complete itself and the ultimate destination will be reached when all mankind returns to the Garden of Eden. Jewish Messianism. The Hebrew word Mashiach refers to the Jewish idea of the Messiah. Mashiach means anointed, a meaning preserved in the English word derived from it, Messiah. The Messiah is to be a human leader, physically descended from the Davidic line, who will rule and unite the people of Israel and will usher in the Messianic Age of global and universal peace. While the name of Jewish Messiah is considered to be one of the things that precede creation, he is not considered divine. In contrast to Christianity, where Jesus is both divine and the Messiah. In biblical times, the title Mashiach was awarded to someone in a high position of nobility and greatness. For example, Kohen HaMessiah means high priest. In the Talmudic era, the title Mashiach or Emiakut Leh HaMessiah literally means the anointed king. It is a reference to the Jewish leader and king that will redeem Israel in the end of days and usher in a messianic era of peace and prosperity for both the living and deceased. In the Tanakh, most textual requirements concerning the Messiah and his reign are in the book of Isaiah, although aspects are mentioned in other prophets as well. The Sanhedrin will be re-established. Once he is king, leaders of other nations will look to him for guidance. The whole world will worship the one God of Israel. He will be descended from King David via King Solomon. The Messiah will be a man of this world, an observant Jew with fear of God. Evil and tyranny will not be able to stand before his leadership. Knowledge of God will fill the world. He will include and attract people from all cultures and nations. All Israelites will be returned to their homeland. Death will be swallowed up forever. There will be no more hunger or illness, and death will cease. The dead will rise again. The house of David shall be as God. God will seek to destroy all the nations that go against Jerusalem. Israel and Judah will be made into one nation again. The Jewish people will experience eternal joy and gladness. He will be a messenger of peace. Nations will recognize the wrongs they did Israel. The peoples of the world will turn to the Jews for spiritual guidance. The ruined cities of Israel will be restored. Weapons of war will be destroyed. The temple will be rebuilt, resuming many of the suspended mitzvot. He will then perfect the entire world to serve God together. He will take the barren land and make it abundant and fruitful. In the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin, contains a long discussion of the events leading to the coming of the Messiah. For example, R. Johanan said, "When you see a generation ever dwindling, hope for him, the Messiah, as it is written, and the afflicted people thou wilt save." R. Johanan said, "When thou seest a generation overwhelmed by many troubles as by a river, await him, as it is written, when the enemy shall come in like a flood. The Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him, which is followed by, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion." R. Johanan also said, "The Son of David will come only in a generation that is either altogether righteous or altogether wicked. In a generation that is altogether righteous, as it is written, thy people also shall be all righteous. They shall inherit the land forever. Or altogether wicked, as it is written, and he saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. 31 And it is elsewhere written, for mine own sake, even for mine own sake, will I do it." Throughout Jewish history, Jews have compared these passages to contemporary events in search of signs of the Messiah's imminent arrival, continuing into present times. For example, many Orthodox Jewish leaders have suggested that the devastation among Jews wrought by the Holocaust may represent a sign of hope for the Messiah's present imminent arrival. The Talmud tells many stories about the Messiah, some of which represent famous Talmudist rabbis as receiving personal visitations from Elijah the prophet and the Messiah. For example, R. Joshua b. Levi met Elijah standing by the entrance of R. Simeon b. Yohai's tomb. He asked him, "Have I a portion in the world to come?" He replied, "If this master desires it." R. Joshua b. Levi said, "I saw two, but heard the voice of a third." He then asked him, "When will the Messiah come?" "Go and ask him himself," was his reply. "Where is he sitting?" "At the entrance." "And by what sign may I recognize him?" "He is sitting among the poor lepers. All of them untie them, all at once, and rebandage them together, whereas he unties and rebandages each separately, before treating the next." Thinking, should I be wanted, it being time for my appearance as the Messiah, I must not be delayed through having to bandage a number of sores. So he went to him and greeted him, saying, "Peace upon thee, Master and Teacher." "Peace upon thee, O son of Levi," he replied. "When wilt thou come, Master?" asked he. "Today," was his answer. On his returning to Elijah, the latter inquired, "What did he say to thee?" "Peace upon thee, O son of Levi," he answered. Thereupon he, Elijah, observed, "He thereby assured thee and thy father of a portion in the world to come. He spoke falsely to me," he rejoined, stating that he would come today, but has not. He, Elijah, answered him, "This is what he said to thee, today, if you will hear his voice." In Rabbinic Commentaries, the medieval rabbinic figure Maimonides, also known as the Rambam, wrote a commentary to Tractate Sanhedrin stressing a relatively naturalistic interpretation of the Messiah under emphasizing miraculous elements. His commentary became widely accepted in the non or less mystical branches of Orthodox Judaism. The Messianic Age is when the Jews will regain their independence and all return to the land of Israel. The Messiah will be a very great king. He will achieve great fame, and his reputation among the Gentile nations will be even greater than that of King Solomon. His great righteousness and the wonders that he will bring about will cause all peoples to make peace with him and all lands to serve him. Nothing will change in the Messianic Age, however, except that Jews will regain their independence. Rich and poor, strong and weak, will still exist. However, it will be very easy for people to make a living, and with very little effort they will be able to accomplish very much. It will be a time when the number of wise men will increase. War shall not exist, and nation shall no longer lift up sword against nation. The Messianic Age will be highlighted by a community of the righteous and dominated by goodness and wisdom. It will be ruled by the Messiah, a righteous and honest king, outstanding in wisdom, and close to God. Do not think that the ways of the world or the laws of nature will change. This is not true. The world will continue as it is. The prophet Isaiah predicted, "The wolf shall live with the sheep, the leopard shall lie down with the kid." This, however, is merely allegory, meaning that the Jews will live safely, even with the formerly wicked nations. All nations will return to the true religion and will no longer steal or oppress. Note that all prophecies regarding the Messiah are allegorical. Only in the Messianic Age will we know the meaning of each allegory and what it comes to teach us. Our sages and prophets did not long for the Messianic Age in order that they might rule the world and dominate the Gentiles. The only thing they wanted was to be free for Jews to involve themselves with the Torah and its wisdom. Advent of the Messianic era. According to the Talmud, the Midrash, and the Kabbalistic work, the Zohar, the deadline by which the Messiah must appear is 6,000 years from creation. Orthodox and Hasidic Jews believe that the Hebrew calendar dates back to the time of creation. The year 2009-2010 of the Gregorian calendar corresponds to the Hebrew year 5770. There is a Kabbalistic tradition that maintains that the 7 days of creation in Genesis chapter 1 correspond to 7 millennia of the existence of natural creation. The tradition teaches that the seventh day of the week, Shabbat, or the day of rest, corresponds to the 7th millennium, the age of universal rest, the Messianic era. The Talmud comments, R. Katina said, 6,000 years the world will exist, and 1,000, the 7th, it shall be desolate, as it is written, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. R. Katina also taught, just as the 7th year is the Shemitah year, so too does the world have 1,000 years out of 7 that are Falio, as it is written, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day, and further it is written, a psalm and song for the Shabbat day, meaning the day that is altogether Shabbat, and also it is said, for 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past. The Midrash comments, 6 eons for going in and coming out, for war and peace. The 7th eon is entirely Shabbat and rest for life everlasting. The Zohar explains, the redemption of Israel will come about through the mystic force of the letter Vav, which has the numerical value of 6, namely, in the 6th millennium. Happy are those who will be left alive at the end of the 6th millennium to enter the Shabbat, which is the 7th millennium, for that is a day set apart for the Holy One on which to effect the union of new souls with old souls in the world. Elaborating on this theme are numerous early and late Jewish scholars, including the Ramban, Isaac Abravanel, Abraham ibn Ezra, Rabbeinu Bachya, the Vilna Gaon, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Ramchal, Aya Kaplan, and Rebbetzin Esther Jungrish. Orthodox Judaism. The belief in a personal Messiah of the Davidic line is a universal tenet of faith among Orthodox Jews and one of Maimonides' 13 principles of faith. Some authorities in Orthodox Judaism believe that this era will lead to supernatural events culminating in a bodily resurrection of the dead. Maimonides, on the other hand, holds that the events of the Messianic era are not specifically connected with the resurrection. Conservative Judaism varies in its teachings. While it retains traditional references to a personal Redeemer and prayers for the restoration of the Davidic line in the liturgy, conservative Jews are more inclined to accept the idea of the Messianic era. We do not know when the Messiah will come, nor whether he will be a charismatic human figure or is a symbol of the redemption of mankind from the evils of the world. Through the doctrine of a messianic figure, Judaism teaches us that every individual human being must live as if he or she, individually, has the responsibility to bring about the Messianic age. Beyond that, we echo the words of Maimonides based on the prophet Habakkuk that though he may tarry, yet do we wait for him each day. Reform Judaism generally concurs with the more liberal conservative perspective of a future Messianic era rather than a personal Messiah. Reflecting its philosophical position, Reform Judaism, unlike conservative Judaism, has altered the traditional prayers to refer to redemption rather than a redeemer, and removed petitions for restoration of the house of David, the days of the Messiah. According to Jewish tradition, the Messianic era will be one of global harmony, a future era of universal peace and brotherhood on earth, and one conducive to the furtherment of the knowledge of the Creator. In this context, the earliest meaning of the word Messianic is derived from notion of Yemot HaMashiach, meaning the days of the Messiah, meaning related to the Jewish Messiah. The Jewish Messiah ushering in an era of universal peace is given expression in two scriptural passages from the book of Isaiah. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift sword against nation, and they will no longer study warfare. The wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child put his hand into the viper's nest. They will neither harm nor destroy on my entire holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. According to the book of Jeremiah, Moab and biblical Elam, which were exiled during the Babylonian exile, will be brought back from their captivity in the end of days. In the book of Jeremiah, it is referenced by Jeremiah, who, speaking in the days of Josiah, prophesied a future time, possibly the end of days, when the ark will no longer be talked about or be made again. And it shall be that when you multiply and become fruitful in the land, in those days, the word of the Lord, they will no longer say, the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and it will not come to mind. They will not mention it, and will not recall it, and it will not be used anymore. Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 16. Rashi comments on this verse that the entire people will be so imbued with the spirit of sanctity that God's presence will rest upon them collectively, as if the congregation itself was the Ark of the Covenant. Gog and Magog. According to some commentators, the war of Gog and Magog envisioned in Ezekiel chapter 38 is expected to occur in the end of days. This is described to be a climactic war that is said to occur at the end of the Jewish exile. Rabbinic comments on Zechariah chapter 14, that in the end of days Jerusalem will be the battleground of Gog and Magog. According to other commentators, the long exile has already made up for it and it will no longer occur.